Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and today we are talking World of Warcraft, Battle for Azeroth, and specifically looking at the good, the bad, and the Sylvanas Windrunner. Because right now there are some very serious question marks hanging over our favourite Forsaken Dead Elf Banshee Ranger, and not the good kind of question mark that means you're about to hand in a quest for sweet loot. Oh no, this is the bad sort of question mark. The kind that makes you worry that the only sweet loot Sylvanas is going to be dishing out next expansion are the ones that drop from her corpse when you and 19 of your favourite other players take her out at the climax of the final raid. And the reason so many people are worried about Sylvanas currently is because as more and more of the story of the next expansion becomes available, either via gameplay or the beta, accompanying literature or data mine text, one uncomfortable fact is becoming more and more pronounced. Sylvanas is, well, and look, I don't want this to sound too sensationalist or anything, okay, but Sylvanas, she's being a bit evil, isn't she? I mean, even in a game where the two factions are constantly at each other's throats and murder and carnage is commonplace, there are many players on both sides who feel that Sylvanas is overstepping the mark in so many ways that the most obvious comparison is one Garrosh hellscream. So what exactly is going on here? What is Sylvanas actually doing that is so bad? How do Horde players feel about it? Are Blizzard recycling their standard Garrosh template, or are they actually doing something a little more subtle, and could they be about to introduce a delicious twist into the mix that surprises us all? Join us as we ask exactly how evil is Sylvanas Windrunner in Battle for Azeroth, okay? Go, 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 go. So question number one, why are we even talking about Sylvanas Windrunner like this anyway? After all, Battle for Azeroth, more than any other Warcraft expansion to date, is being billed as a tale of two factions. Every other WoW adventure so far has involved Azeroth facing some big world-ending threat that has seen the Horde and Alliance at most combine forces to defeat, and at the very least required them to stop killing each other, you know, just for a minute or two while we sort this shit out. And that's pretty much how every expansion has panned out, with the possible exception of Mists of Pandaria, but even then, players knew right from the very beginning that both factions would be laying siege to the Horde capital to take out Garrosh in the final raid. For the time being at least, BFA has no clearly defined antagonist to speak of. So far, this really is a story about an unfolding and increasingly global conflict, as the Horde and Alliance scramble to bolster their ranks to fight for the new uber-powerful Azurite that is cropping up all over the place. The Horde enlisting a selection of straight-backed old schoolers, the Alliance plumping for an altogether plumper variety of allies. And it's a bold move by Blizzard, because when it comes to storytelling, it presents them with a lot more challenges than there's a huge Legion invasion, we need to stop it, or there's an ice guy doing death stuff, we need to stop him. That's something that all players can get behind. They have a common goal. In Battle for Azeroth though, the players will have one of two different goals. We need to beat the Alliance, or we need to beat the Horde. And that is a whole lot more complicated, not least because of the problems of balancing the actions of the two sides. And Blizzard have made a big deal of this balance being a main focus of their writing this expansion. The idea that there are two stories going on here, and actions that seem terrible when seen from the outside look different and more understandable from the inside. A good example of this would be the Broken Shore scenario. If you played as Alliance, it did certainly look an awful lot like the Horde were purposely going back on their word, betraying the Alliance forces and leaving them to die, whereas if you took part as a Horde player, you saw the truth. That the Horde went back on their word and left the Alliance forces to die. But look, seriously, there were like loads of demons up there, okay? Vol'jin broke his tooth, what else were we supposed to do? Ian has famously said of the story that
Azeroth is a world of grey. It's never been a world of black or white.
So why all this focus on Sylvanas specifically? Is it because we're massively biased against the Horde on our channel? No, I have 4 max level Horde characters on Argent Dawn alone. No, basically, if morally grey is what Blizzard are aiming for here, then it's fair to say that they might not be pulling it off. So far, the Horde Warchief's actions seem to be less bad stuff happens in war, more let's start a war so we can do all this bad stuff. Bad stuff is awesome. Yo, pass me that bottle of extra spicy bad stuff. I'm gonna empty that shit everywhere, and honestly, I don't even care where it goes. And here's the thing, if it was only hardcore Alliance players thinking Sylvanas was acting cray-cray, then that's exactly how it should be. The problem is, her actions are so provocative, so indiscriminate, and so black and white bad that a majority of Horde players are feeling they'd rather not be associated with her either. And this is why a video asking if Sylvanas is evil isn't an anti-Horde video, because it's a question that majority of the Horde player base are asking too. And this is why the most common assumption is that Blizzard want us to feel that way, to set her up as yet another Horde Warchief that needs taking out. So let's take a closer look at what Sylvanas is getting up to in Battle for Azeroth and see if there's anything in this. Is she morally grey, or is she flat out evil? I think the easiest way to get a handle on Sylvanas here is to go through all of the main events that we know of in Battle for Azeroth so far and see how the actions she's taking rate on our scale. Are they understandable in the context of war? Are they the aforementioned morally grey? Or are they plain straight down the line murderous tyrant? So bear in mind here that obviously to do this we're going to have to go ahead and tell you what we know about the story for Battle for Azeroth, so if that's something you'd rather not hear about, then seriously don't be a dick, go and watch something else. And if you're still around, remember that all of this stuff hasn't happened yet and could all change before the expansion launches. But this is what we know right now. Since Gen Greymane's naked ambush of Sylvanas in the Stormheim storyline of Legion, the only major interaction we've had with her in-game has been at the Orgrimmar Embassy, where she is involved in sending you off to recruit High Mountain and Nightborn allied races into the Horde. But even before that in the timeline are the events at the start of the forthcoming Christie Golden novel, Before the Stormed. At the very beginning of the novel, before she has even been informed of the existence of Azurite, we see Sylvanas catching up with Nathanos Blightcaller, who is essentially acting as her consort in the Undercity while she does the whole Warchief thing in Orgrimmar. They shoot the shit, talk about the new Desolate Council, discuss Sylvanas' plan to invade Stormwind, kill the inhabitants and raise them as the undead. Wait, hang on, just go back on that last bit. Discuss Sylvanas' plan to invade Stormwind, kill the inhabitants and raise them as the undead. Oh yeah, that's what I thought you said. Yes, it would seem that as the rest of Azeroth breathes a collective Velen-style sigh of relief and ponder the prospect of a well-earned Earl Grey, Sylvanas is already plotting the overthrow of the Alliance capital and the systematic murder of thousands of civilians. Now, the pages that we have available to read of Before the Storm don't really make it clear if there is a very good reason behind Sylvanas' Stormwind plan or not, and you know, I'm sure it's very morally grey. I'm sure there are so many layers of grey in those morals, it's like a big grey onion, but right now it does seem a little bit... well, it's a little bit tyrant-y, isn't it? I mean, Jaina once almost drowned Orgrimmar, but in fairness, that's because her hometown had just got nuked, and even then she realised that was probably a revenge too far and backed down. Sylvanas apparently wants to wipe out Stormwind just because there's nothing good on Netflix, so why not? She wants to do it just because she thinks Anduin is a weak king, and she can. And the problem with the Stormwind plan, and how absurdly moustache-twirlingly awful it seems, is that already, straight off the bat, it's quite hard not to think Sylvanas is being purposely painted in the worst possible light. So, for the sake of the rest of the video, let's just say that we don't quite know enough about it right now and conveniently forget about it like it's Highlander 2 and move on to collecting Azurite. Okay, good, so this we have already seen in-game in the form of the Legion epilogue cutscenes and quests. Gallywix shows Sylvanas the new super powerful substance the goblins have found in Silithus, and Sylvanas orders the procurement of said substance. Nothing wrong with that, and the fact that those perfectly legal Horde excavations are disrupted by Alliance forces has to be a moral win for Sylvanas and the Horde, even if Silithus is technically neutral ground, so there's an argument that neither faction can claim mining rights there. When these epilogue cinematics are played out in Before the Storm, though, it is worth noting the different reactions that Anduin and Sylvanas have to holding Azurite for the first time. Whereas both instantly recognise its power, Anduin is really worried about the destructive potential of the Titan blood, whereas Sylvanas is super excited by how many people might die as a result of its discovery. And, you know, it's not hard to see why, since she was literally just talking about how she was going to kill all of the people in Stormwind, and okay, fine, I promised we wouldn't bring that up. Next up in the chain of events is the Massacre of the Desolate Council. And this is another event from the novel, and for a more in-depth look at what goes on, check out our video on the subject. But the long and the short of it is that in an attempt to create some kind of lasting peace with the Horde, Anduin reaches out to Sylvanas and the Desolate Council, who are a group of Undercity residents questioning what it means to be undead and never allowed to actually die. The plan is to allow a meetup between these Forsaken and remaining living family members from Stormwind. It's the central climactic event of the entire book, taking place in the fields outside Stromgarde, and it goes down like this. Some of the families that meet can't possibly reconcile their breathing, not breathing, rotting, not rotting differences, and sadly part after just a minute or two, but most give it a shot and surprisingly start reconnecting. Sylvanas has said that this will be the only time she'll allow such a meetup, and a handful of family members are so upset by the fact that they won't be able to see each other again that they decide to make a break for the Alliance camp towards Stromgarde. When Sylvanas sees this happening, she blows her horn, and you know Sylvanas blowing her horn is never good news. Last time she did that, the Alliance lost a king after all. So most of the Forsaken out in the field start making their way back to the Horde camp as requested, except for the handful who are bolting, who keep on bolting. And at this point, Sylvanas unleashes her Dark Rangers, who swoop down on their Fellbats and murder all of the Forsaken, those who were running away, but those who were obediently making their way back too. She also personally kills Kalia Menethil, but we don't need to get into that here. The fact is, this is a massacre. Of course, some of these Forsaken could be described as defectors, and we'll be coming back to them, but the reality is that the majority of these Forsaken civilians were doing exactly what Sylvanas told them to do, and she slaughtered them anyway, in front of their families. In fact, it's actually the Alliance that end up burying the undead, dead. Personally, I don't see how there can be any defense for these actions. Even Nathanos, #1 Sylvanas fanboy extraordinaire, is horrified at what he's seeing, but Sylvanas says of the civilians she just executed, "I cannot allow that sentiment, that hope, to grow. It is an infection ready to spread. I have to cut it out." Which is all very well, but then why allow the meeting in the first place? It raises the possibility that this massacre is actually premeditated, a plan to get rid of the Desolate Council, who at most were a mild annoyance to the Dark Lady. And this would make it extra specially double evil. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, yeah, but what about those Forsaken who were trying to defect? They deserve to be shot in the back as they ran to their families, surely. Well, maybe I'll leave that up to you and your conscience, but I will say this. Can you imagine Anduin doing the same? Then comes the Burning of Teldrassil. By the time you watch this video, we might all have the exact details of what happens here, but at the moment, this is still the vaguest of all the events that we'll cover in this video in terms of what we actually know, and some of that might not even be accurate. Christy Golden famously tweeting as much when a lot of this came to light. But we think we know that Sylvanas orders an attack on the area and on the city of Darnassus. The reasons being that the Azurite the Horde have just discovered and are mining is so powerful that it will change warfare forever, and that what is certain is that Teldrassil and its Night Elves pose a clear threat to the peace and safety of the Horde on Kalimdor. Darnassus will serve as a safe harbour for smuggling Azurite to the Eastern Kingdoms. We simply cannot allow this to occur. To win this war, we must control the Azurite. To control the Azurite, we must eliminate the Kaldorei threat. We do not have time to waste. So again, there's nothing specific that the Night Elves have done to provoke this attack on their capital. It's a strategic target in a war that it's still not entirely clear the Alliance know that they're fighting. And whatever the specifics of the battle, it somehow ends with Darnassus and the World Tree in flames. And there's been plenty of discussion about who exactly is responsible for this. Is this the actions of the Horde, or maybe of the Alliance? Sylvanas says, after all, "I did not foresee this end." And whether she's talking about the tree burning, or there still being some Night Elves alive, is unclear, because she also says, "Our strike on Teldrassil was meant to end a war before it began, to take an enemy's home and destroy their leaders in one stroke. We have only partially succeeded." Basically, honestly doesn't matter who starts the fire in the end, does it? Sylvanas' plan was to wipe out the Night Elves anyway, just like she planned on wiping out Stormwind and raising the... Okay, fine, sorry, no, we won't mention that again, I promise. Now, by itself, a tactical assault on an enemy city is quite standard in times of war, but in the context of the events, it's more troubling, because look at what's actually happened here up to this point. Azurite was discovered by the Horde. The Alliance's first reaction is to try and broker a peace with Sylvanas, and her response to that is to attempt to wipe out an entire people. It's problematic, but we don't know enough about this right now, so we're going to take Christy Golden's advice and move on to the Alliance response to the Burning of Teldrassil, which is the Battle for Lordaeron. Because now this war is on, and the Alliance launched an attack on the Forsaken capital, and here, for the first time, we see a major assault on a Horde location. So surely this is like an evening of the scales for Sylvanas. It's much easier to be in the right when you're defending your home than when you're attacking someone else's, isn't it? So Sylvanas starts by evacuating the citizens out of Undercity. Excellent, good choice, well done, and you didn't even murder any of them. That is a good start. Next up, she leads the defense of the city walls as depicted in the Battle for Azeroth cinematic. Splendid work, very heroic. She unleashes one of the new Azurite war machines, because why not? It's a war after all. Then she uses Blight to indiscriminately kill soldiers on both sides so she can raise them as undead. Wait, what? Oh, Sylvanas, it was all going so well, and then you had to go and kill literally everyone. Because yes, enemy humans, elves and dwarves who are attacking the city die, and that's okay, but she kills all of the orcs, Tauren, and blood elves too. Now, I'm wary of applying real-life standards of warfare to a fantasy setting, but wiping out your own troops with chemical weapons is a pretty despicable war crime, and again, could you see Anduin doing the same? The Scorched Earth technique is a thing that real retreating forces do, destroying anything of use in a location as they vacate it to make it as worthless as possible for the invading forces. But murdering your own troops is not ethically okay in any context. Field Marshal Haig is still detested in Britain today, which proves that you can be on the winning side, but if you show a clear disregard for the lives of your own forces, then history will always remember you as the villain. So the use of Blight on Horde frontliners has to be another black mark against the Dark Lady, doesn't it? Now, there's an important important point to raise about all the events we've described so far. They all happen either in the novel, in the Legion epilogue, or in the pre-patch. So everything that we've described here happens before Battle for Azeroth actually starts. So here's something from the game itself. The Horde attack on Brennadam in Stormsong Valley sees Sylvanas' forces running around killing civilians, and when it originally appeared in the alpha, players could recover this letter from the Banshee Queen herself. Commander, take the valley, burn the towns, no survivors, all shall serve me in the end. Sylvanas isn't just capturing military targets here, she's wiping out towns and their civilian populations to raise them into undead, which on our scale is less morally grey, more Pol Pot going to a fancy dress party dressed as Idi Amin and then killing all of the guests. But here's the thing about this note which leads to our next section. They changed it. In more recent beta builds, the wording has changed to General. Our spies report that the farms and villages of Stormsong Valley are sending supplies to Kultiran soldiers. It is only a matter of time before they do the same for the Alliance troops. This cannot stand. Seize Stormsong for the Horde, cut their supply lines and establish a foothold for our forces. A much more measured and tactical order than kill all the things, and one that is, okay, maybe a bit over the top, but can definitely fall on the reasonable end of the scale. And this is interesting because with all the things that we talked about so far, I would argue that not only are the things Sylvanas is doing wrong, and in many cases evil, but despite all of their talk of morally grey, that's exactly what Blizzard want us to think about her. They want us to dislike Sylvanas, whether we are Alliance or Horde players, which is why they have her doing such outrageous things. Dialing back on this letter, though, shows a desire to be a little bit more even-handed in Sylvanas' motivations. So all of those other examples we've looked at so far, is that actually supposed to be your morally grey stuff after all? Because if it is, well, it's not working, is it? Sylvanas is clearly coming across as someone whose actions are getting way out of hand, according to Horde players. So surely it's only a matter of time before the Horde, yet again, is looking for a new war chief. Well, let's ask that question then. Are we supposed to be worried about Sylvanas? And why are Blizz doing this? Because Sylvanas is not Garrosh. She's one of the most popular characters in the history of World of Warcraft. I don't think anyone wants to see her become irredeemably evil or corrupted or lost, and certainly not as a raid boss. I think we can all agree that whether we like her or not, she's better than that. So why are Blizzard taking her so far down a road that it might well be impossible to come back from? Well, I don't think it's to make her a Garrosh style, we must all join forces to defeat this tyrant bringing dishonor to the Horde character. There is no doubt though that at the moment her decisions are having a similar effect on those around her. Saurfang is already out, Nathanos is shocked, and it's not like there aren't more traditional potential leaders waiting in the wings to take her place. But I don't think that that's how Sylvanas' story is going to go down. I think Blizz have much bigger plans for her. For me, there are two possible scenarios here. The first, the one that I like more because I'm a bit of a sadist, is that Blizzard are purposely throwing us a massive curveball here, and instead of some of the data mined info being wrong, all of it is. I have often fantasized about being a Warcraft dev and how much fun I'd have purposely feeding misinformation to the players in beta and PTR builds. What if Blizzard has finally got sick of all the data mining and decided to throw completely false information at them? What if, when all of this stuff goes live, everything is flipped on its head, and instead of being the cold-hearted pragmatist who's willing to murder as many of her own people as the enemy, Sylvanas actually turns out to be the genuine hero of the piece? How cool would that be? I mean, that's definitely not going to happen because it would be a phenomenal amount of work. It would mean most of those 96 preview pages before the storm are fake. It would mean half of the Lordaeron scenario is different to how it will go live. That's an unprecedented, almighty waste of resources for what is essentially an elaborate, if genius, troll. But still, I would totally do it, that's all I'm saying. No, far more likely, I think, is option number 2. That at some point during the expansion, Sylvanas will either realise what she's become, or pull some big heroic action to redeem herself and save everyone. Because remember, in WoW, it doesn't take much to have everyone forgive you. Warlord Scrom tried to genocide a whole race and take over another planet, and all it took was him getting captured by a demon, rescued by us, and then spinning around for a bit by Archimond, and suddenly the genocide is ancient history and we're all sharing bants and memes in a group WhatsApp chat together. And whatever Sylvanas' heroic act entails, and I think it will be a sacrifice of some sort, I don't think we'll be seeing her final death. I think the lower chose Sylvanas Windrunner because they knew that somewhere along the line there is a decision that needs to be made that only someone as ruthless and far gone as Sylvanas will be capable of making. And she makes that decision, does something horrible that needs to be done and that no one else would have the heartless resolve for, and then that's her work done. That's her sacrifice, doing something unforgivable which doesn't just save us all, but saves the Horde, because she takes that sin on her own shoulders. And I think with her work done, she will voluntarily walk away from the Horde, and they will get the Saurfang or Baine that I think would make everyone happier, as that evil but necessary act goes with her and the Horde is spared the consequences of it. I think it will be portrayed as very selfless, and whereas it won't be the end of Sylvanas Windrunner in WoW, it may well be her legacy. So what do you think, guys? Are you on board with what Sylvanas is doing so far, or is it tipping over into evil character territory? Do you think Blizz is doing it on purpose, and if so, why? What's the plan for the Banshee Queen? I just want to end on this awesome scene I came across in Orgrimmar a few weeks ago. This is the joy of being on an RP server. A rally to show allegiance to the Horde leadership. Even if I think it's fair to say that maybe even a majority of Horde players are uncomfortable with Sylvanas' direction in BFA, it's heartening to see that the loyalists are still plentiful and passionate. And thanks for joining us today. If you like this video, don't thank us, thank our patrons who give their actual real-life money to make our videos possible. We've been working on this one for the best part of a month now, and we simply wouldn't be able to do that kind of thing without their help. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. Remember, my name is Hiruma Redx. No, my name is Taliesin from me and Evitel. Until next time, cheerio.